Hi, Mr. Mayor.
How are you, Mona?
I'm well, sir.
Good.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have two questions. First, regarding this forcible removals. Will that be again on your legislative agenda for next legislative session? And what changes are you seeking to that? And also, if there is currently a bill for that, who is sponsoring the bill? That's my first question.
Sure. That's absolutely as much on our agenda as ever for the upcoming session. It's called the Supportive Interventions Act. It's been introduced by Assemblymember Braunstein, and we hope to have a Senate sponsor soon as well. The legislation addresses a series of flaws and gaps in that law that we rely on to make sure someone gets treatment when, by no fault of their own, they're unable to recognize their own need for it, as painfully obvious as it is to everyone around them. And a key piece of that is to codify language that we believe the current law already says, and the current law is vague, and courts have interpreted to mean a certain thing that there's still some pushback on our efforts to make people understand. And so we would like to have explicit language in the law that makes clear that when you find somebody to be a danger to themselves or others, right, because that's the crux of the standard for holding somebody involuntarily, you've got to find that they have a mental illness and that they're a danger to themselves or others. Danger to self has to mean more than just they're suicidal or they're engaging in some outrageously dangerous conduct or at some risk of imminent physical harm, right? It also has to consider the person who's a danger to themselves in that they can't meet their basic human needs of food, clothing, shelter, medical care, and they are slowly wasting away, right? It's that kind of slow motion self-destruction that we all see so often on the streets and subways, where when it's, again, that's not always mental illness that's responsible for why a person's taking such poor care of themselves. But when we can see that it is, we ought to be able to say this person's a danger to themselves and get them care. And so having that language explicitly in the law so that we can finally end this debate with some advocacy groups who are kind of paralyzing sometimes our folks' understanding of what their authority is would be immensely helpful. Another big piece of that is to make sure that when doctors are evaluating whether someone is currently a danger to themselves or others, they're taking account of more than just how that a person appears before them in that very moment, right? Because we have people who've been through the system a lot. They have developed some ability to kind of keep it together for the moment of an evaluation, or maybe they've been in the hospital a little while and they've been subdued and calmed down, and the doctor is seeing them saying, well, I don't see any evidence that you're a danger. You're telling me you're fine. You're not saying you're going to hurt anybody, and they let them go. Right? And so we want to make sure that there is language in the law that makes clear that an assessment of whether someone's a danger to themselves or others has to take account of more than just how they appear in that moment. It's also about their medical history, their likelihood to stay engaged with outpatient treatment when they do get released, and the behavior that brought them there in the first place. So getting that full context into it is another of the many things that we have in a bill, and I'd be really happy to sit down with you and walk through all of it.
I have a second question,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor.
And there's another piece to this that we have to think about. We're closing Rikers. We're building 4 more jails. 18 to 20% of the inmates at Rikers Island have severe mental health illness. 51% have mental health illness. It's not logical to me to create 4 smaller Rikers. I've called for this before, and I will call for it again. One of those jails should be a state-of-the-art mental health facility where people can get real care. It is criminal that we are incarcerating people with severe mental health illness. And to continue this, knowing that you're not going to hold them forever, and then they leave, and you see things like this happen. Families are seeing the mental health of their loved ones erode, and there's no real infrastructure that we're using modern day state-of-the-art methods, a beautiful facility. We're building something ground up and new. One of those jails should go to deal with 51% of that population. Give them the help they need, the follow-up care that they need, allow the check-ins that they need. Right now, that does not exist in the capacity that it should. We closed down psych wards in the past because they were inhumane with draconian measures, but let's get it right by building a brand new facility. Some elected officials have reached out to me. They said, Eric, we heard you. We're willing to sit down and speak with you. How do we implement this? We should not be building 4 new jails only. It doesn't solve the problem. What was your second question? Yeah.
There have been reports that you're winding down some of the migrant shelters, Mr. Mayor, maybe perhaps integrating them with the regular Department of Homeless Services shelters. So does this mean that migrants or migrant families and I don't know what's the term, or regular homeless families or indigenous homeless families are all going to be in the same shelter? Because we really have a high number of families with children, New York City public school children, who are in shelters. So I'm just curious.
Yes, first of all, we had, I give you that number all the time. We had 220,000 migrants and asylum seekers that came to the city. Cost us $6.4 billion. Federal government only gave us close to $200 million, and we had to grapple for that. The reality is we successfully, with our 30 and 60-day program, we successfully saw 170,000 transition take the next step on their journey. That in itself, when you look at other cities and municipalities, you see what an amazing job Deputy Mayor Williams Isoms and the team was able to do. We moved from the emergency level, we want to normalize that. And that normalization means closing down some of the HERCs that we were able to close down. We're going to continue to try to do that. And the team is looking at what the next level of what we want to accomplish in this process. But what needs to be clear, we have never and will never put families with children with single adults. That has never been our plan. That will never be our plan. Families with children, that's a population that we have to treat with the level of sensitivity that is deserved. We saw the terrible things that happen when you mix single adults with family with children. That is not our plan, and that won't be our plan, but we're looking to downsize the operation because we've been successful. In spite of the critics that said don't do the 30-day, 60-day program, we've been successful in downsizing that population.